Hi everyone, this is day 27 of the LDvid30 challenge, and I continue with the second C of creating meaningful scenario, that is consequences. Come to think of it, since we were children, we learn better when we have a cause and we have an effect. Stay away from fire because it hurts you. Stay away from sharp objects because they might hurt you. Don't try to venture over high objects because you might fall. And the reason why they create this hardwiring in our brain is because where we do an action, we face an emotion. We experience an emotion, whether it's hurt, pain, pleasant experiences, unpleasant experiences, and we bring our attention, our whole attention is focused in that experience because we're experiencing a strong emotion, and that's how we learn. And writing consequences for learners is something very similar. You want them to perform an action, face an emotion, pay attention to that emotion, and learn through it. So what are some of the things that we can do to craft meaningful consequences for well-designed choices that we talked about yesterday? So there are 4 steps. Number 1, show them the impact of the choice that they chose. That impact can be on 4 aspects. It could be, if it's a customer setting, it could be on the customer, it could be on business, on its effect on team members, and its effect on the learner's life itself. So let's say if it's a customer, what is the immediate effect of the choice on them? What emotion do the customers feel? What are the long-term consequences of your choice for the customer? If it's a business, does it affect revenue? Does it affect morale? If it's your team members, how does it affect my peer, my supervisor, my direct report? And the 4th, personally, does that choice affect the learner's character in that scenario? Does it affect their chances of succeeding at a task? These are some of the areas that you can explore to create an impactful consequence for the learner, which he or she can remember. And while creating the impact, you also want to keep the design or the structure of the course in mind. Is it a course that requires immediate consequence, or can you use different scenarios to build upon one another to show a final consequence, right? So maybe they did one thing good, another thing bad, another thing bad, and then you show the consequence. You did this well, but these 2 didn't add up to your first choice. So it all depends on how your course is designed, what you're trying to teach, and what behavior you want them to learn from your training. The second thing is create consequences that mimic real life experiences. So is your scenario set in an office, in a factory, in a conversation between team members, in a conference room, in a boardroom, or anywhere, whatever the content of your training is? Put the learners in a scenario which they would face actually in their job, right? And no one is going to come and ask them, okay, here's the question, is this true and is this false? And that doesn't happen in real life, right? You're always applying something that you learned. So create scenarios in a space where the learners actually are in their jobs. Portray realistic characters that they face in their environment. Use words and audio and sound to convey the consequence. You need not always write, your supervisor was angry because you did this. You might just show an angry supervisor and be like, blah 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 blah, and let the learner feel the emotion of the supervisor through the dialogue and the expression, because we as humans are visual creatures. We look first and then read later, right? So you can always use that impact of a realistic setting, right? And the third is to just goes on from the second facet of experiential consequences. Keep it realistic. Don't make the consequences seem black versus white and always versus never, some of the things we talked about earlier. Help them face the consequence like they would in a real life scenario. There are some cases when you would want to use dramatic consequences, like whether it's a game or a gamified training where you want to encourage the learners, celebrate their victories and warn them when they don't do well. So it depends on what kind of training you want, right? And the fourth one is to not avoid creating controversial consequences. Avoid using stereotypical responses or characteristics of certain people or groups. Avoid using intense emotional triggers, and using scenarios that very closely mirror certain people or organizations, because you never know what background the learner comes from, what they have faced in their life, and you don't want to create, you want them to be realistic but not so realistic that the learner sort of gets sidetracked from the training and instead focuses on some other experience that he or she might have faced in life. So that's it for today. The four steps to creating meaningful consequences is to create consequences that have an impact, create consequences that are experiential, things that you can show and avoid using text. 3, creating realistic scenarios that the learners can relate to or that the learners face in their workplace. And number 4, to avoid using controversial consequences so that your learners are focused on your training and not on something else. So that's it for today. Tomorrow we'll look at part 3, connections. So see you tomorrow. Bye.